above, the big one above is what? The third nerve. The third nerve is going into what? The lateral wall of the cavernous sinus. What else is in the lateral wall of the cavernous sinus?
Second, fourth,
Read it well. Where's my chart? Where's that forceps though? Need a color that can really show. Or purple. So watch this now. Go up like this, look. Shh. Looks like who? Batman. Who is this here? That is the, in here is who? In there is what? What are we doing a frontal section through? The sphenoid bone. This is the body of the sphenoid, which is going to contain what? The sphenoidal air sinus. Okay? In here, who can we put in here now? In here goes the what? The pituitary gland. So the pituitary lies right in there. Okay? Right in here is the pituitary. Then now in the lateral wall, this is now the cavernous sinus. Just like that. Just like that. So that's the cavernous sinus on either side, like that. And then sends a shelf of dura over here called the what? The shelf of dura here is called what? The diaphragma ocelli. So the dura mater is going to split on the lateral aspect of the body of the sphenoid. Okay? That's the dura mater. And then contained in here is going to be what? Oops. The internal carotid artery. And then inferolateral. So inferolateral to the internal carotid artery will be a nerve. And that nerve is the sixth cranial nerve. Alright? So there we see, look at this, the body of the sphenoid. This is a frontal section through the sphenoid bone. A frontal section through the sphenoidal bone. And there you see the what? The sphenoidal air sinus. This big space above is known as what? The hypophyseal fossa. That's the dura that is splitting on either side to form what? The cavernous sinus. And sends a shelf of dura over the hypophyseal fossa known as what? The diaphragma ocelli. Contained in the cavernous sinus will be what? The internal carotid artery. And inferolateral to him will be what? The sixth. Then in the lateral wall, from superior to inferior will be, from superior to inferior will be 3. Oh, we have to use another color. 3, 4, 5A, 5B. Okay, and this cavernous sinus is all, they're cavernous because there are a lot of trabeculae in there. Okay, so in the lateral wall, from superior to inferior will be 3, 4, 5A, 5B. So we need to identify cranial nerve 3, 4, 5A, 5B, and cranial nerve 6. Okay. Then lateral to this will be a special part of the brain right here, a big part of the brain right here lateral to it, and that is going to be called the uncus. So lateral to the cavernous sinus is a very special structure. And that structure is known as the uncus. See it right here? Right there. That's lateral to the cavernous sinus. And that uncus is going to contain a special structure called the amygdala, or the amygdaloid nucleus, right there. Alright, and that is the uncus. You found the brain? You man, I need it. Where you have it?
Oh no. Moved it. It was in here.
Of the pituitary. What's posterior to the pituitary? William? What is posterior to the pituitary? The back of the chair. The back of the chair. The what? The dorsum ocelli. Anteriorly is what? And inferiorly is sphenoidal air sinus. Laterally is cavernous sinus. Superiorly is diaphragma ocelli. And superior to the diaphragma celli, optic chiasma. And superior to the optic chiasma, floor of the third ventricle. 300 marks. Very good. Then now we see, and by the way, the diaphragma celli has a sinus in it, and that is called a circular sinus. And that forms also communication between the two cavernous sinuses. Very good. Then the lateral wall of the cavernous, then in the lateral wall of the lateral to pituitary is a cavernous sinus. And the cavernous sinus is one of the largest dural venous sinuses, extending from where to where? Forming by a splitting of the dura mater, extending from where to where? Hold this a minute, Shakira. Extending from where to where? Extending from the, where does the cavernous sinus extend from? The apex of the petrous temporal bone to the superior orbital fissure. The apex of the petrous temporal bone right there to right here, the superior orbital fissure. And what's going to go through that superior orbital fissure? All those cranial nerves that are going to the orbit. So things like what? 3, 4, 6. And the terminal branches of 5A doesn't go through. The ophthalmic nerve doesn't go through. Where does the optic nerve go through? Optic nerve is going to go through its own opening, and that opening is known as what? The optic canal. Together with an artery. That's for next year. And that's the ophthalmic artery. Alright. But something goes through the superior orbital fissure that you have to know, and that's the superior ophthalmic vein. Cavernous sinus extending from where? The apex of the petrous temporal bone to where? The superior orbital fissure. Containing in it what? Venous blood. Mainly coming from the orbit. And the internal carotid artery. And that internal carotid artery, when it's in the cavernous sinus, does what? Bends. Undergoes all of these bends. Referred to radiologically as what? Carotid siphon. So what? Carotid siphon. Inferior lateral to the arteries, which nerve? The abducens. Okay? Supplies which of the muscles of the orbit? What's the chemical formula for the muscles in the orbit? LR6SO43. What's the formula? What's the formula? LR, whoops, sorry. What's the formula? The formula is LR6SO43. LR6SO4. Lateral rectus, which is going to cause your eyeball to abduct, is by the 6th cranial nerve. Superior oblique is by the 4th. All other extraocular muscles are by the 3rd. LR6SO43. They may ask if you're going for gold. They may ask you, for example, you know,